I could feel every pair of eyes on me the moment I stepped into the private lounge. The air smelled faintly of leather and expensive perfume, and a quiet hum of conversation filled the room until people noticed me. I wasn't wearing anything too loud, just a simple cream silk blouse, tailored trousers, and heels that clicked softly against the polished floor. But it was the confidence, not the clothes, that made heads turn. In my hand was a flute of champagne, still fizzing from the bottle the flight attendant had poured for me. And then I saw them. Chloe, my younger sister, though you'd never know it from the way she carried herself, as if she was older, wiser, and far more important than me. Her hair was curled to perfection, a designer purse hanging from her shoulder. And next to her was our mom, Margaret, dressed in a floral dress and a pearl necklace I'd seen her wear only on special occasions. They were standing by the main entrance to the lounge, clutching their rolling suitcases. The expressions on their faces? Priceless. It was the kind of mix you couldn't fake. Shock, confusion, and just the smallest flicker of something else. Was it jealousy? Their eyes locked on me. I sipped my champagne. For a moment, none of us said anything. The memory of their words from just a week ago echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. "You're not coming with us to France." And Mom's voice, sharper than Chloe's, "You're too poor to pay for the ticket." But here I was, not only flying to France, but flying on a private jet. I leaned back in the soft leather seat of the lounge's VIP section, the one that only passengers on chartered flights were allowed to use. The staff knew me by name. One of them walked over, asking if I wanted my bag taken on board now or closer to departure. I told them to take it now. I could feel Chloe and Mom approaching before I even looked up. Their heels made sharp taps on the marble floor, quick and uneven, like they weren't sure if they should run toward me or keep their distance. "Lena?" Chloe's voice was higher than usual, as if she couldn't believe her own eyes. What are you doing here?" I placed the champagne flute down gently on the small glass table beside me. "Oh, just waiting for my flight," I said, keeping my tone light. Mom frowned, her eyes darting between me and the uniformed attendant who had just wheeled my carry-on toward the gate. "Your flight?" she repeated. "Where to?" I let the question hang in the air, giving a small smile. I didn't owe them details, not now. Chloe blinked rapidly, still trying to process. "Wait, are you flying commercial, or?" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes sliding toward the large glass window behind me. There it was, gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. The private jet. White body, gold trim along the tail, steps already rolled out, and waiting. Her jaw slackened. "Is that?" I simply raised an eyebrow. And then, like a switch had been flipped, the shock on their faces began to morph into something else. Desire, the kind that made people forget their pride. Mom stepped forward, lowering her voice. "Lena, darling, your sister and our flight is in an hour, but..." She trailed off, glancing at Chloe. Chloe jumped in, her smile a little too sweet. "Yeah, maybe we could, come with you instead. I mean, private jet. It's way faster, way more comfortable." I almost laughed at the sudden change in tone. Just hours ago, they were probably patting themselves on the back for leaving me out of their exclusive trip. Now they were practically begging. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived. Slowly, I stood up, smoothing the front of my blouse. I stepped closer to them, close enough that they could see the calm in my eyes. "You want to come with me?" I asked softly. They both nodded quickly, eager, as if saying yes fast enough would seal the deal. And then I said it. The 3 words they had thrown at me before, but now with a weight they couldn't have imagined. "You're too poor." The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe's lips parted in disbelief, while Mom's eyes widened as if I had just slapped her. I didn't wait for a reaction. I turned, walked toward the boarding gate, and the attendant closed the door behind me. Through the small oval window of the jet, I saw them standing frozen in the lounge. Two perfectly dressed statues, watching the stairs retract and the engines roar to life. It started about a week before that day at the airport. I was at home, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, finishing up some orders for my business, when Chloe's name popped up on my phone. I answered without thinking much about it. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was full of excitement. "Guess what? Mom and I are going to France next week." I smiled automatically. "Wow, that's amazing. When are we leaving?" There was a pause on the other end. Not a long one, but long enough for my stomach to drop. Well," she said slowly, "you're not coming with us." For a second, I thought she was joking. "What do you mean I'm not coming?" "I mean, you're not invited." Her tone was matter of fact, like she was telling me the weather forecast. I tried to laugh it off. "Chloe, come on. This is a family trip, right?" "Yeah," she said, "but it's kind of expensive. And you probably wouldn't be able to afford it anyway." That stung. I was quiet for a moment, trying to process what she had just said. Before I could answer, I heard Mom's voice in the background. "Is that Lena?" "Yeah," Chloe replied, her voice muffled as she covered the receiver. And then Mom spoke directly into the phone. No hesitation, no softening. "Lena, you're too poor to pay for the ticket. We don't want you stressing yourself about money." Her words hit harder than I expected. Not because of the money, but because of how easily they dismissed me, as if my presence didn't matter. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Right, well, I have a lot going on anyway, so it's fine." Mom gave a short, satisfied, "good," before handing the phone back to Chloe. "We'll send you pictures," Chloe added brightly, as if she had just done me a favor. I mumbled something about needing to get back to work and ended the call. For a while, I just sat there, staring at my laptop screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't focus. The words, "too poor," kept echoing in my head, over and over. It wasn't the first time my family had made me feel like the odd one out. Chloe had always been the golden child, the one who got the expensive dresses, the trips, the attention. I was the one who stayed quiet, worked hard, and learned to be content with the scraps. But something about this, it was different. It wasn't just being left out. It was being told, flat out, that I wasn't good enough to be part of them. That night, I couldn't keep it to myself. I called Daniel. Daniel had been my best friend since college, and over the years we'd built a small online business together. He was the only one who really knew how well things had been going lately. When I told him what Chloe and Mom had said, he went silent for a moment. And then I heard the sharp exhale of someone holding back anger. "They actually said that to you? Out loud?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly, like it was no big deal. "Lena, that's disgusting," he said, his voice tight. "You've been killing yourself working on the business, and you've done more for yourself in the last 2 years than they've probably done in 10. They have no idea what you're worth." I let out a bitter laugh. "Well, apparently I'm worth less than a plane ticket to France." Daniel didn't laugh. "They treat you like you're invisible because you don't flaunt your success. Maybe it's time you stop letting them write the story about who you are." His words stuck with me. I'd always chosen to keep my life private, especially with family. It was easier that way, no questions, no judgments. But now I started to wonder if my silence had only made it easier for them to dismiss me. I didn't tell Daniel everything I was feeling. I didn't tell him how embarrassed I was, or how much it hurt to think that my own mom didn't want me there. But I did tell him one thing. I'm not going to let this slide. He didn't ask what I meant. He just said, "Good." The rest of the night, I tried to distract myself by working, but the phone call replayed in my head in pieces. Chloe's matter-of-fact tone, Mom's cold certainty, the way they didn't even hesitate. I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, I wasn't going to be the one feeling small. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my blinds and my phone buzzing with new orders. The sound was oddly comforting. While my family seemed to think I was barely scraping by, the truth was very different. And Daniel was one of the few people who knew it. When we first started our small online business 3 years ago, it was just a side project, We sold custom accessories, took special orders, and worked late nights from our apartments. Over time, things had taken off, faster than we expected. Now we had loyal customers all over the country, partnerships with influencers, and a steady stream of sales that had quietly turned into real money. I never told Mom or Chloe how much I actually earned, not because I was hiding something bad, but because I knew how they were. Every dollar I made would be weighed, compared, and used as a measure of my worth. I didn't want to be part of that game. That morning, Daniel stopped by. He walked into my kitchen holding 2 coffees and a bag of pastries. "Breakfast delivery?" he said with a grin, sliding 1 cup toward me. "Thanks," I said, taking a sip. "Perfect timing. I was just checking our sales from last night. They're insane. That influencer post must have really worked." Daniel pulled out his phone and started scrolling. "Oh yeah, the numbers don't lie. Lena, you realize that if we wanted to, we could take a month off right now and still be fine?" I smirked. "Don't tempt me." He looked at me over his cup, his expression shifting from casual to serious. "You know, it still blows my mind that your mom and Chloe think you're struggling." I shrugged. "They've never asked about my work. They just assume I don't know, barely getting by." "That's because you've been playing small around them," Daniel said bluntly. "I get it. You don't want drama, but you've built something incredible, Lena, and they're still treating you like you're some charity case." I set my cup down and leaned back in my chair. It's not worth the fight. If I told them the truth, they'd just find another way to look down on me. "Maybe," Daniel said, "but maybe it's time to stop hiding. Not to prove anything to them, but for you. To remind yourself that you don't have to sit quietly while they talk about you like you're less." I didn't answer right away. He wasn't wrong. I'd kept my success private for so long that it felt natural, but deep down I knew part of me was afraid. Afraid of their reaction. Afraid they'd twist it. Afraid they'd still find a way to make me feel small. But after what happened with the France trip, something had shifted. The humiliation of hearing those words, "You're too poor to pay for the ticket," was still fresh in my mind. It wasn't about the money. It was about being dismissed, ignored, and underestimated. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "What if you didn't just tell them? What if you showed them? In a way they'll never forget?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He smirked. "We've got the resources, we've got the connections, and we've got a situation where they think they've got the upper hand. You could flip the whole thing." I tilted my head, curious. "Flip it how?" "Imagine this," he said, his voice lowering like he was sharing a secret. "They go to the airport thinking they're leaving you behind, and then they see you there, not in the regular terminal, in the VIP lounge, waiting for a private jet." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "A private jet? Daniel, that's completely possible," he interrupted. "You forget I know people. One of our clients has a standing arrangement with a charter company. He owes me a favor. You could be sipping champagne before they even board their plane." I stared at him for a moment. The image popped into my mind so vividly. Chloe's jaw dropping, Mom's face twisting in confusion. It wasn't about rubbing it in. It was about balance. About finally standing tall in front of them without a single apology. Daniel grinned, reading my silence as interest. "Think about it. You wouldn't even have to say much. Just being there would be enough to change the whole narrative." I took another sip of coffee, my mind turning. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But for the first time since that phone call, I felt a spark of something that had been missing. Control. The truth was, I had options. I wasn't the person they thought I was, and maybe it was time to remind them and myself of that. 2 days after that conversation with Daniel, I got an email that made me pause mid-scroll. It was from the airline, a generic notification about upcoming flights out of our city. I almost deleted it until a familiar detail caught my eye. A flight to Paris scheduled for next Friday morning. It wasn't just any flight. The departure time and terminal matched exactly what Chloe had mentioned when she was bragging to me about her France trip. I stared at the screen for a moment, my coffee growing cold beside me. The thought came fast. If I wanted to, I could be at that airport at the exact same time as them. I didn't plan it immediately. I told myself it was just an amusing coincidence. But later that day, Daniel dropped by, and the first thing I said was, "You're not going to believe this." When I told him about the timing, his eyes lit up. "Lena, this is it. This is the moment we talked about. You don't have to orchestrate some complicated scheme. The universe just handed you the perfect setup." I laughed, shaking my head. "It's not like I can just walk into the airport and pretend I'm flying private." "Who said anything about pretending?" he replied, leaning back on my couch with a smirk. "I spoke to our client, remember? The one with the charter company connection? He said he can arrange something for us. A private jet, round trip, first class everything. It's already available that day." I blinked at him. "You actually called him?" "Of course I did," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I figured you'd need a little encouragement." I sat there, imagining it. Walking through the private terminal, luggage handled by staff, being greeted by name, all while Chloe and Mom stood there, wondering how I could possibly be there. It wasn't about revenge, not exactly. It was about showing them, without a single lecture or argument, that they'd been wrong about me for a very long time. Daniel leaned forward. "Here's the best part. Their commercial gate is right across from the private terminal entrance. They'll see you without you having to do a thing." I hesitated. "That's almost too perfect." He grinned. "Exactly, which is why you need to do it." We spent the next hour working out the details. Daniel would handle the booking and the arrangements with the charter company. I just had to decide where I wanted to go. "I could still go to France," I said slowly. "You could," he agreed. "Or you could go anywhere you want. The point is the moment, the look on their faces when they see you. That's the payoff." I wasn't used to thinking about myself this way, planning something with this level of intent. Usually I just stayed out of the way, letting things roll off my back. But this time was different. This wasn't petty. This was a statement. By the time Daniel left that afternoon, the plan was in motion. I had a departure time, a booking confirmation, and a quiet thrill running through me. That night, as I packed a few things into my suitcase, I thought about what it would be like when I walked into that lounge. I didn't want to look over the top. This wasn't about flaunting, but I wanted to look undeniably put together, someone who belonged there. The next few days flew by. Orders came in, business meetings happened, and life went on as usual. But in the back of my mind, the upcoming Friday loomed like a secret only I knew. On Thursday night, Daniel texted me a simple message. "Everything's confirmed. You're going to love this." When I asked what he meant, he sent back a photo, a sleek white jet with gold trim along the tail. It was waiting in a private hangar, spotless and ready. For a moment, I just stared at the picture. This was really happening. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. The opportunity had practically landed in my lap, and I wasn't going to waste it. Tomorrow morning, I wouldn't be the sister who got left behind. I wouldn't be the daughter they looked down on. Friday morning arrived with a kind of quiet energy that made me get out of bed without hitting snooze. I'd been thinking about this day all week, and now it was here. The first thing I did was lay out my clothes. I didn't want anything flashy, no screaming labels or glitter. I wanted something that said effortless confidence. After some thought, I chose a fitted navy jumpsuit with a simple gold necklace, soft leather heels, and my favorite watch. My hair was styled in loose waves, makeup natural but polished. As I stood in front of the mirror, I realized this wasn't just about the outfit. This was about how I carried myself. No slouching, no avoiding eye contact. Today, I was walking into that terminal like I belonged there. Daniel arrived right on time to pick me up. He gave an approving nod when he saw me. "Perfect," he said, understated, but powerful. We drove in comfortable silence for most of the way, the city still waking up around us. When we pulled up to the airport, we didn't head toward the regular drop-off point. Instead, Daniel steered the car toward a gated side entrance, where a security guard in a dark uniform checked his list before waving us through. From there, it was like stepping into another world. The noise and crowds of the main airport were nowhere to be seen. The private terminal was quiet, sleek, and filled with the soft hum of conversation. Large windows overlooked the tarmac, where a gleaming white jet, my jet for the day, waited in the sun. A woman in a tailored blazer approached us with a smile. "Ms. Carter, welcome. We'll take your luggage on board now. Would you like a drink while you wait?" "Champagne, please," I said, surprising myself with how naturally it came out. Daniel grinned. "Told you you'd fit right in." I sat down in one of the deep leather chairs, taking in every detail: the polished wood tables, the subtle scent of fresh flowers, the quiet efficiency of the staff. It was a far cry from the crowded, chaotic gate areas I was used to. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw them. Chloe and Mom were just walking into the main terminal through the glass doors on the other side of the security barrier. Even from here, I could spot Chloe's bright red coat and Mom's pearl necklace. They looked exactly how I'd pictured them. Dressed to impress, pulling matching luggage, moving with that same air of superiority I knew so well. They hadn't seen me yet, but I could already imagine the moment they would. I wasn't nervous. In fact, a calm confidence had settled over me, the kind I hadn't felt in years when it came to them. The champagne arrived, crisp and cold in a tall glass. I took a sip, savoring the quiet moment before everything changed. It didn't take long. As they made their way toward their gate, Chloe glanced in my direction, probably out of habit, scanning the area, and then did a double take. Her head whipped back so fast it almost made me laugh. She nudged Mom, who turned to look. I watched her eyes narrow slightly, confusion flickering across her face as she took in where I was sitting, the glass in my hand, and the uniformed attendant walking away with my luggage. They slowed their pace, whispering to each other, but didn't come over right away. I could feel their eyes on me as they tried to figure out what was going on. Daniel leaned in slightly. "Enjoy this part. It's my favorite. The moment they realize the story they've been telling themselves about you might be wrong." I smiled, keeping my gaze relaxed, not giving them the satisfaction of an immediate reaction. I wasn't going to wave them over or explain anything. If they wanted answers, they'd have to walk up to me. And I had a feeling they would. For now, I stayed in my seat, legs crossed, glass in hand, looking out the window at the jet waiting for me. The sun caught on its gold trim, making it gleam even brighter. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the person they thought I was, and today they were going to see that for themselves. I didn't have to wait long. Chloe's curiosity has never been something she could hide, and sure enough, she was the first to make a move. She tugged at Mom's sleeve, muttered something I couldn't hear through the glass barrier, and they both started toward me. I stayed seated, swirling the last of my champagne in the glass. Daniel had moved a few steps away to take a call, but I could feel his quiet watchfulness. When Chloe and Mom reached the entrance to the private terminal lounge, a security guard stepped forward. "I'm sorry, ladies," he said politely. "This area is for private passengers only." Chloe gestured toward me. "She's my sister." The guard didn't move. "Do you have a boarding pass for a private flight?" They hesitated, clearly not expecting that question. That's when I finally stood, walking toward them with measured steps. "It's okay," I said to the guard, my voice calm but firm. "They're family." He nodded and stepped aside. Chloe wasted no time. "What is this?" she asked, eyes darting from me to the windows, where the gleaming jet was visible. "Why are you here? Are you flying somewhere?" "Seems that way," I said, taking a sip from my glass. "Just a quick trip." Mom's eyes narrowed. "On that?" She gestured toward the tarmac. "Lena, since when do you... How on earth can you afford..." I raised a hand slightly. "Mom, let's not start with the assumptions." Chloe folded her arms. "So you're telling me this is normal for you now? Because last I checked, you weren't exactly..." "Careful," I interrupted, my tone sharper than I expected. "We're in public." That shut her up for a moment, but I could still see the questions swirling in her head. Mom tried a different approach, softening her voice. "Lena, honey, you've never mentioned anything about, well, this. Why the secrecy? I smiled faintly. Not secrecy. Just privacy. Chloe scoffed. Please, you've always been the one sitting on the sidelines. And now suddenly you're drinking champagne in some private lounge and boarding a jet? It doesn't add up. I held her gaze. Maybe that's because you've been too busy assuming you know everything about me. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between us was taut, filled with years of unspoken tension. Then Mom glanced toward the jet again. Are you going somewhere important? Everywhere I go is important, I said simply. Chloe let out a short laugh. Oh, wow. Look at you, talking like you're some kind of, I don't even know, celebrity? CEO? Who are you trying to impress? No one, I replied. Least of all you. Her mouth fell open slightly, and I felt an odd satisfaction in the stillness that followed. Daniel returned then, slipping his phone into his pocket. Ready when you are, Lena, he said, as if the three of us weren't in the middle of a silent standoff. Chloe blinked at him. And who exactly are you? Daniel smiled politely. A friend, and a very patient one. Mom's tone turned brisk again. Well, I suppose if you're so busy we won't keep you, but don't think for a second this isn't strange, Lena. One day we'll get the full story. I stepped closer, just enough for them to hear me without raising my voice. Maybe, but today's not that day. I turned away before they could respond, handing my empty glass to an attendant and walking toward the boarding gate. Daniel followed, but I could feel Chloe's eyes burning into my back. The sound of my heels against the polished floor echoed through the quiet lounge. As we reached the doorway to the jet bridge, I glanced over my shoulder. Mom and Chloe were still standing where I'd left them, their expressions unreadable. And for once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Not now. Not ever. I could feel the heat of their stares before I even reached the steps of the jet. The polished metal gleamed in the afternoon sun, its white paint almost too bright to look at. The whir of the engines was low and steady, like a giant beast waiting to take me away from everything I'd known. But I stopped. I didn't rush up the steps like I'd planned. Instead, I turned. There they were. My sister, her perfectly styled hair blowing in the wind, and my mom, clutching her designer purse like it was her lifeline. Just days ago, both of them had looked at me with that same mixture of pity and superiority. Just days ago, they told me I couldn't come to France with them because I couldn't afford it. And now here they were, standing at the base of the runway, not with pity, but with something else entirely. Desperation. Lena. My sister's voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. She took a step toward me, her heels sinking slightly into the tarmac. We didn't mean... I raised my hand to stop her. I didn't want excuses. I didn't want sugar-coated apologies or sudden bursts of kindness that I knew would fade the moment they got what they wanted. I wanted the truth to hang between us. I walked down a single step from the jet staircase, letting the moment stretch. The air smelled faintly of fuel and salt from the nearby coast. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice calm. Do you remember, I said slowly, what you told me? My mom's lips pressed together. She knew. Oh, she knew exactly where I was going with this. You said I couldn't come with you, I continued. That I was too poor to buy a ticket. That I didn't belong. They didn't respond. They didn't have to. The memory was as fresh for them as it was for me. And then I smiled. Not a cruel smile, but one that carried every ounce of the hurt they'd caused, every ounce of the quiet strength I'd built since. I looked them straight in the eye and said the 3 words I knew would cut deeper than anything else I could possibly say. You're too poor. It was almost satisfying, the way the color drained from my sister's face, the way my mom's eyes widened just enough for me to catch it before she tried to mask it. The silence that followed was sharp, almost physical. They weren't used to being on this side of the conversation. They weren't used to being the ones locked out, watching the door close. You can't be serious, my sister said finally, her voice trembling. Lena, we're family. Family? I tilted my head. Family doesn't talk to each other the way you talk to me. Family doesn't laugh when someone they love is left out. My mom reached out like she wanted to touch my arm, but I stepped back. The engines behind me grew louder as the pilot began preparations for takeoff. "I think you've said enough," I told them. They stood there, frozen. I could see their mouths open like they wanted to argue, but no words came out. For once, there was nothing they could say that would undo the moment. I turned, climbing the steps one by one. The inside of the jet smelled faintly of leather and polished wood. The seats looked softer than anything I'd ever sat on in my life. I didn't look back right away. I waited until I was inside, just before the door closed. That's when I turned for the last time. They were still standing in the same place, small against the wide stretch of tarmac, the wind pulling at their clothes and hair. I met their eyes one last time, and then the heavy door shut with a firm click, sealing me inside my own quiet world. The jet began to move. I felt it roll forward, the engines roaring, the view outside shifting as the runway stretched ahead. And just like that, they were gone. Two figures shrinking into the distance, swallowed by the space between us. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the one left behind. I was the one leaving.